think we'll get started. We'll get started now. So if you can just jump to the first slide, please. So hopefully everybody can see everyone can see the slides here on their main screen. Welcome to this webinar. I think some other people will join us as we go along. But I'd really like to just take the opportunity to introduce you all to Dr. Heather Wheeler, who can give us a wave. Heather, we'll see you. Yeah, thank you. Who's an expert in mental health in high performance sport. She's someone that I'm very excited we've been able to bring in to help us. It's a hot topic at the moment, mental health around COVID, but this role is not really to do with COVID. That's a bit of a coincidence for us. It's something we've been looking for some time, is how to address the mental health issues that all athletes have, all people have, and how to best handle that within our system appropriately. And the mental performance coaches, led by Penny, have been doing a great job, and our doctors have been doing a great job. But we still saw a bit of a gap, and we brought Heather in to help with that. She's been here for a few months now with us on a part-time contract, and she's already gone great strides in getting together a strategy for us through to Paris. This is really like a long-term picture for us for Tokyo, but also all the way through to Paris at least. And she's spoken to a number of our coaches, all of our key IST people already, and we have enough together now for her to speak to you, to the athletes, which is obviously our most important group, and to just introduce you to what she's thinking, and to get you to give a bit of input to us as well as to which direction we're going to go in, which direction we'll finally end up. And for me, this is something that is important. I can remember when I was young, which was obviously a long time ago, if you had a hamstring injury and you tried to get any help with it, there was something wrong with you. Like you had to grin it out, be tough, get on and do what you needed to do. And quite rightly now, high performance athletes, if they have a hamstring injury, the first thing they do is get it treated as quickly as possible. And no one's going to think you're crazy or not good or not fast enough or whatever. You're being professional and getting a hamstring fixed as quickly as you possibly can in the right way. Try and find a way to not have that happen again and move on. And it's very similar in the mental health world. There is still a group of people that think if you put your hands up, there's a mental health challenge that you're facing, that somehow weak or wrong or not fast enough, or it's just crazy. It's just part of being a person, but also part of being the sport. And we want to encourage people to get those things addressed as early as possible and find ways to work with the issue and either deal with it and get on and still perform in a high way, or even better, try and address the issue and resolve it. And again, do things to make sure it doesn't come back again, and then carry on as a high performance athlete. So that's the thing we've come from. This is about performance. This is about being professional and elite in what we do. And really, what I'm going to do is hand back to Dr. Wheeler, to Heather, who'll lead this presentation. I'm going to hang around at the start, which is like a common piece of the talk for everybody, and I'll watch all that stuff. That will be recorded. We'll make the early bits of this presentation available to everybody on our website, and then I'll leave, and Dr. Wheeler will do some more personal work with you guys. That won't be recorded. That will be private. That's a deliberate decision by us, just to try and make as safe a space as we can. And then we'll follow up, and hopefully Heather will talk to you about this as well. But we'll follow up with coaches and more public forums at other times and in other places. But we really wanted to give you guys this space just at this time. So that's it for me for the introductions. I don't know if I've spoken to all the slides properly, but I'm now going to hand across to Dr. Wheeler, and look forward to watching and seeing what happens. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Simon, so much. So yes, I had anticipated you would do your 4 slides like you had prepared them before, but you spoke to the things. So thanks for the intro. The part we left out is just making sure that you know that there are a lot of resources for you guys, and I hope to speak to them today at some point, but that, we want to know whether you're aware of them. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're not aware of all the resources that are actually ever evolving and we are taken care of. And also, do you feel safe to use those resources? And if not, why not? So I really hope we're going to have some discussion today about that, so we can get you to a point where mental health is actually treated the same way that physical health is, as Simon spoke to. I'm also going to talk a little bit today about kind of mental health, mental well-being in general. And that's part of why I'm here. So this was supposed to be Simon's job, but we're going to click on, and you can definitely look me up if you wanted to. But I just want to pause and just say I'm so excited to be here. So if Simon signed off, I want to make sure that you guys know that I would love to see your faces if you're willing to put your video on. It helps a lot. I am so sad not to be in a room full of you and to be able to do things that way. I usually walk around the room. I'm very dramatic with my arms, and this is really, really different. So let's pray for no tech issues, have that happen at some point. And Andrew, my man, is going to help us out. And Jessica Scarlato has been an awesome help that way too. So she's back up because Andrew's Wi-Fi isn't also perfect. So we're going to just do our best. And in the meantime, take care of ourselves, and hopefully you're comfortable and we can go along for the ride and have a great discussion today. So my overview for today is to make sure that you guys get the basis of AC's mental health strategy. As I said, IST has had this info already. Coaches will get it. And APAs, all that as well. So we have today with us the MPCs. We have wonderful John, Penny, and Lisa here with us. And so these guys have carried you through quite a bit, and I'm going to add on to it a little bit with some of the mental health specific stuff. So we're going to talk about mental health continuum. We're going to talk about mental illness and mental wellness and what might contribute to that. And then we're going to get to helping yourself and getting help. In the meantime, we're going to have a little bit of fun. Hopefully we're going to have some polling anonymously. And again, let's pray for no major issues in that. So let's jump right in. Our mental health strategy for AC so far has been quite reactive, right? So we help anybody who has a request for help, or when there's a concern raised, and we hope we are, or an event that happens that unfortunately leads to a need for help. And now we want to get to the point where everybody gets mental health education and support. So this is the first of that. I'm really, again, happy to be playing a role in this. We also, in a reactive mode, end up having kind of later intervention. So people, unfortunately, are getting kind of things later on instead of having an opportunity to kind of know how you're doing ahead of time, and maybe hopefully preventing difficulties with mental health occurring and having some earlier intervention so things don't get so entrenched. And we're going to talk about how things get entrenched in a minute. So instead of focused on mental illness, we, in a proactive approach, would be obviously focusing on well-being and a continuum mental health. And we really want you guys to be able to catch that just like you do with your physical health. And instead of physical health being prioritized and having kind of perhaps some stigma and some minimization of mental health issues, or perhaps just not knowing where to go and not knowing who to trust with the information that you have and you want to share, we want really to make sure that mental health and physical health have an equal playing field, and that it's safe to talk about and you guys feel like you're supported in from all domains. And why do we want to do this? Because we know mental health is foundational, right, for performance. So we know that the brain is constantly working, and it's not about your physical readiness for any event, but it's really about kind of how are you using your brain to attend to what you need to attend to, whether it's the event, not the crowd, or making decisions in a flexible manner on the event day for the conditions or whatever you need. And also the perceptions and the interpretations you have about yourself, your world, your competitors, everything that allows for us to actually have good performance. So your NPCs, again, have done an amazing job at this, and I'm kind of adding to it. But we know this, right? It's foundational in terms of performance. When it comes to athletes' mental health, though, right, we want to make sure there are many components contributing to this. So mental health is not just about mental illness. You can have a mental illness and have perfect mental health. So let's make that really clear. And yet there are strengths or mental health assets that each of you have that may not be even being used to their benefit. You may not even be aware of them or self-deprecating in a way, but those are part of what contributes to mental health. So does other domains of well-being, right? Whether it be physical, spiritual, social, financial, the other things going on in your life, they contribute to how you're doing in terms of mental health. And of course, sport factors. So the culture, the training, the teammates, the all of the setting that's contributing to how your mental health is. Obviously, we want to have an impact on all of these aspects of mental health in order to really have an impact. And we'll be talking about how we're doing that. So this is where Andrew starts to set the tone with a quick video. I just want to comment, though, that I was really hoping for a mental health champion to come forth from you guys. And we did try, didn't have time to keep chasing people, but we do know that there are mental health champions in you. And we want a Canadian champion to come forth and talk about these issues and as best as possible be a forerunner. But we found that this video really captured things. So we're going to put Alexi here and hopefully it resonates with you. So go for it, Andrew. I think we're missing sound.
What would be the greatest challenge of my life? After the Olympics, I was diagnosed with severe clinical depression, and it nearly cost me my life. But it doesn't have to be that way. What if we athletes approached our mental health the same way we approached our physical health? Shortly before my 5th birthday, my mom took her own life. I've always felt driven to not become like my mom. When I was younger, I felt like if I wasn't pressing on the gas all the time, it wasn't good enough. Successes were an easy way for me to feel like I was indestructible. We might think that depression strikes when bad things happen, but for me, it happened right after the pinnacle of my life, right after I'd accomplished my wildest dreams. It was after the Olympics. It began with sleeplessness. I couldn't turn my mind off. What was I going to do next? The Olympics is not the problem. I had experienced my life, but I was so unprepared for this tremendous crash. People told me to snap out of it and to just try to be myself again, and it only made the feelings worse. I tried to keep pressing on the gas. I was in contract negotiations. I tried to move to like an altitude training group, coaches. I was sleeping like 1 hour a night and trying to run 120 miles in a week. I started to notice pain in my hamstring and lower back, which I ignored. That developed into a tear in my hamstring and a crack in one of the bones in my lower back. I couldn't move without being in terrible pain. I started to have suicidal thoughts. I always saw myself as someone who could never feel that way. Like I was like, I'm not my mom. My dad told me, Lex, we aren't gonna lose this time. He made me see a doctor who said, Alexi, you have a scratch on your brain. It's like when you fall down rollerblading, you get a scratch on your knee, you have an actual injury to your brain. That was like the flip of the switch for me. It made me feel like I could heal. When an athlete gets injured, we are on it. We are seeing our physios 3 times a week. We're doing the rehab. And I just completely took on that mindset with my mental health, which meant that I committed to seeing this psychiatrist 3 times a week as if he was my coach. I understood that like a broken bone, I wasn't just going to feel better overnight. So many Olympians have experienced mental health injuries. In fact, a lot of themselves to extreme standards have. When it comes to sports, elite athletics only focuses on treating injuries to our bodies. When a bone breaks or a tendon tears, we know exactly what to do. There's a process, there are resources, but in my entire experience, I've never had any sort of support in the way of mental health. What if we looked at mental health the same way we do physical health? This means that athletes should feel no shame and should get help right away. Coaches should be super vigilant, and teams can even hire support staff, psychologists, psychiatrists, just like they might hire a physio to be there for the athletes. I've had such misunderstanding for my own mom and such resentment towards her. I thought she just didn't love me enough to stay. And that's not true. She was sick. I look at some of the treatment that she had, I understand that it wasn't useful. She didn't have to die. Like, she really didn't have to die. And that's so sad because we would have been really good friends, I think. Once I healed my mind, I was able to get back to running. I don't expect to be happy every single day. That's a part of chasing a dream, is that you have these ups and downs, and I can treat them just like I would an injury. So I'm trying to approach my life a little bit more, I guess, like an athlete.
Physical health continuum, you guys are pretty good, right? Where do I fall, right? Am I in the green zone? Am I good? I'm healthy, or I'm kind of getting injured or ill, right? And you probably know when you're heading from the green to red as well. But I'm, sure, because I work with many athletes that we're not as good and not as familiar or easy at checking in with where we are in terms of mental health on that continuum. So if we were to look at it from a mental health continuum perspective, right, we want to kind of look at the kinds of things, and I hope you guys can see some of this small print, that would bring us from a healthy, reacting all the way to ill kind of level on a continuum of mental health. And the indicators here are the thoughts, the feelings, the physical sensations, and the behaviors, right? So we know that, again, people move up and down this continuum, and you can have an illness and then still be well in some other ways. But we're really talking about how well are you functioning, okay? So this continuum really looks at to what degree are the thoughts or the feelings taking over in your life, right? Are they encouraging you to engage in behaviors to escape or to want to escape, to get to a point where you don't feel like you can function? You're not functioning in your performance, perhaps you're not functioning otherwise in your life. And so we also see this show up in the physical. It's really important to point out, right, that you may have physical ailments, but in fact, they are representing or are syncing with some mental health issue that's going on. And we want you guys to really be good at noticing what that is, and also your IST to be able to help you do so as well. So just to define things, when we do get to that level of red, mental illness, and this isn't what we're going to only talk about today, but it is important to define as something that is a persistent and substantial deviation from your normal functioning. So this requires you to know how you tend to be, right? And how you're not yourself. And maybe for others to notice that is an add-on in terms of what we use to diagnose and help people understand that there is a mental illness going on. There would be symptoms or things that are impairing your ability to function, to experience pleasant affect, some joy in your life. You're not able to kind of maybe have healthy relationships or contribute in the same way that you're used to. And it usually is prolonged changes. We're talking about a couple weeks, okay? So most people, if you have a couple bad days here and there, maybe that's in that kind of reactive mode, but we want to make sure that, something can catch something then so it doesn't persist longer than a couple weeks. So I want to spend a couple minutes just with my own little kind of model, taken from some things about from Eastern psychology, actually, just to kind of comment on how people go from the green to red, because it's actually really important in terms of understanding mental health. So bear with me here as I walk through this, and my daughter's helped me with all these animations. So let's, again, hope it works. So when we have pain, physical, okay, let's talk about physical first because it's easier. again, if I was in a mode with you guys and we didn't have to work with a chat box, I'd ask you Socratically, what is it, right, that the body does in reaction to that, right? So when we have a pain, a back pain here, right, the rest of the body around that tends to brace, right? We tend to kind of get into protection mode. Yes, I don't see anybody's faces. Would love to see them. So I can't even see nodding. Yes, Noah, can you nod for me? Yes, okay, thank you. And so if we have physical pain, right, we tend to kind of react into protective mode, right? And we get into that zone of making sure that we are not going to feel worse, right? So we call this resistance, right? You know, it's a natural instinct, but it's not very helpful. It actually makes pain bigger and grow, right? So you can see here in this curve, this kind of sine curve, you can see that, you know, resistant makes the pain come and go a little bit, it takes a little bit longer to go, and it makes it more intense, right? We're moving up into the yellow and orange kind of realm here. And in emotional pain, the same thing happens, but it happens in the form of thoughts like this, right? You know, I really can't have this pain. I can't have this sadness. I can't have this anger. I don't want to feel this way. This worry is scaring me. Is it going to go on forever? You know, why me? Why is this happening to me? And we just kind of add to our pain, right? You know, and the emotions get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I see this happen moment to moment when I'm working with people, but also over time. And of course, you know, being champions, athletes are often perfectionists, right? So another past love of mine, both personally from my own history with being an athlete, but also just in terms of my research. And this fear of failure makes you want to kind of get out of this quicksand really quick, right? Unfortunately, it's just, if you've ever heard of quicksand, right, to how to get out of quicksand, you don't dig yourself out, right? You know, there has to be something else, some other techniques, right? So what ends up happening is you dig yourself further and we end up in a place of suffering. Right? So you guys have probably heard this quote before, right? Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And you could trace it back to many Eastern philosophers and psychologists, and Buddhist philosophy as well. What we know we add to this as well is shame. Okay, so unfortunately, with Bell Let's Talk Day, as those other things that I know that you guys are aware of, there is unfortunate stigma with respect to mental health issues. And that's what we're trying to change one by one, and in AC in particular right now. So there's thoughts perhaps, right? I'm weak, I should be able to handle this by myself. And those are the things that continue to keep us in suffering and also keep us hidden from getting help, right? So when we're feeling that way, it really shuts us down from getting the help we need. So we do know that shame and stigma is, you know, becomes what Victoria Garrett calls a hidden opponent. I meant to quote her here. She's someone who did a study for the NCAA down in the US, and really talks about how much we tend to, you know, hide everything that we're struggling with mental health wise, and it has a huge impact on performance. So one of my aims today is to try and bring that down a little bit. I just want you to look around you. Of course, we can't see people's faces, and yet there's, you know, 1 in 4 of you will have a mental illness in your lifetime. Will have had, will have in the future, currently do have. And many, many of you will have suicidal thoughts. So it is much more common than you think. Unfortunately, this month has probably been the worst of my entire career in terms of suicidal ideation. I can tell you that many people want to escape what's going on right now. And it really does feel better to know there's another option for some people. Unfortunately, it's really the extent of what's going on in terms of mental illness and difficulty right now. And then you guys, not you, but we, because of the shame, don't share. And often what happens is we end up having more fear and more shame because we're not sharing with anybody, and it becomes this hidden opponent. So as you're trying to compete, you're really not just competing with who's out there, you're really competing with what's going on inside as well, and it really takes away from your performance, hence the reason why we need to help you as well. We know from research and from lots of experience that when we name what's going on and we get it out there, we actually tame it. So if you have an ACL injury and you go in and you have no idea what's going on with your knee and you're figuring out what the heck is happening, and the doctor says, okay, there is a name for this. This is what's going on. This is the treatment. This is the prognosis. It feels a lot better. Yes? Noah, can you nod, please? Yeah, thank you. Noah happens. I'm going to put him on the spot. I'm sorry, Noah, I don't know you yet, but I'm just going to get you to nod for me because you're the only face I see. And just being able to kind of name it actually calms that, right? And makes everybody feel a little bit better, right? So if we name it, we tame it, and we actually are able to kind of calm down the emotion center in the brain using our higher level cortex. There's real neuroscience to support this. So naming it to ourselves is enough, but really naming it to others is what adds to that power of that. So here's where we're going to shift gears, and hopefully I think Simon's probably going to sign off now, and we're going to start to do some sharing. This is going to be anonymous though, so just so you know, I would like you to pick up some sort of, you can use your computer if you want, but maybe your phone, and if you haven't used it already, going to what's called menti.com. It's called a Mentimeter, and it's kind of fun. I'm really hoping that we can make this work. So if you guys take a minute, please, and set up on your phones menti.com and enter this code that's on the screen. And we're going to end up throwing you some questions. So Andrew's going to put a question out there, and we're going to invite you to answer it. And then we're going to start to see your responses come up on the screen live. And it won't, again, have a name attached to it. So the first question is, what types of stressors have you faced this year, right? So we're really talking about the past year just to keep it real and present with COVID. So let's start entering our responses and see what shows up in this thought cloud. Yes, I'm noticing the code went off. So maybe if Jessica or Andrew, you can, no, it's on the top of the screen. That's right. Thank you. So anything, guys, you can put more words together if you want. It doesn't have to be a single word. Put whatever comes to mind. NPCs, please add in your voice here. Maybe there's things that you're hearing that others aren't sharing. We've got loneliness. Uncertainty is a big one. Financial strain. Lack of access and facility access. Yes. Isolation. School stress. Lack of racing opportunities, I'm assuming. Lack of self-worth difficulties or injury. Putting your dreams on hold. Dissonance. Yeah. I think I've caught most of the big ones. Excellent. Okay, travel, lack of travel, right? Real change in that way. Okay, let's move to the next one. So have you struggled to maintain mental well-being during during the pandemic? So if you can just use that scale from green to red. Red's, of course, the most difficult. We're going to see the responses come live. So start to see numbers showing up in different areas. Awesome. I think we're getting there. Yep. Okay. I think we have everybody, Andrew. Go ahead if you think it's time. So we're seeing, by the way, right, a few people in the red, and most people hanging out though in the yellow and orange area. We don't see a lot of green, which is right, not surprising to me, but really important for you guys to know you're not alone. Go ahead. So this is the next question. Do you believe that sharing your mental health difficulties does show weakness? Yes, no, a little bit. Awesome. So yeah, there's that little bit of question mark there, right? A couple people very much so. And if you've had an experience where you have been shamed or humiliated for sharing, again, my deepest condolences. Let's see if we can change that. So yeah, so a lot of people lie in the middle there. Great. Okay, last question. Do you have evidence that friends, oh no, second last, I think. Do you have friends or other important people in your life that think differently of you when you share this stuff? Numbers coming in. Yeah, good. Okay, so there's some people who, yes, that is true. You have had some evidence. And again, right, that really sucks. And then there's others maybe who haven't tried because of that fear. Some of you don't have that evidence. Okay, next one. And then, do you have any evidence that sharing emotions can help you feel better? Okay, right. So although people have had evidence that in fact there may be some judgment from some people in your lives, you also know that it helps. It's not harmful for you in terms of feeling better for the most part. And again, one person who said no. Okay, so let's move on, Andrew. I'm going to have to take back the screen, I think. Thanks, guys, for sharing. I hope that, in general, you're just trying to kind of feel less alone in this, that you have similar stressors, and the ones you've noted are, of course, ones that others are feeling and that I've experienced in working with people as well. And I think it is helpful to name it to tame it. So let's kind of summarize that and name a few things that have come up. Certainly COVID, right? The lockdowns, the isolation, the frustration, fear, perhaps fear for your life, who knows, or fear for the life of those who are close to you. But this kind of total interruption in normal life. Question marks around the games, right? Around Tokyo, right? And perhaps what you had planned for your life before or after that, for those of you who were going and who are going. The uncertainty often leads to that sense of lack of control, right? You are just kind of a blade of grass in the wind. You're waiting for information on when your next training set's going to be. You're waiting as to whether there's going to be an event or not, a training camp. And it's really, really scary. It's one of our biggest allergies. We often talk in psychology about an intolerance to uncertainty as being the biggest cause for anxiety in life. And so also having more unstructured time, right? Which for some people would be great, but for a lot of people, especially if you have a goal that's interrupted, it just leads to a whole bunch of more time to think and ruminate and go over things and worry about things and think a little bit about life outside of training, which you probably don't have much time to usually. With canceled events, a lot of people are feeling unmotivated, right? So again, would love to see a raise of hands in terms of who of you have felt less motivation, right, in this past year to train and to keep going. You guys are used to having feedback and events that allow you to kind of feel like you can keep going. And also that you can get feedback about how you're doing. So if you aren't getting that, you're going to have a lot of self-doubt. I've seen more people struggle with what's called Imposter Syndrome, for those of you who don't know what that is, right? Feeling like you're just not going to live up to your name or what you feel like you can do or other people are expecting of you because of the fact you don't have feedback, right? You don't have a sense of how you're doing relative to your competitors around the world. So that's a really big problem right now. And then lastly, kind of the who are you stuff, right? So if you're not training as much as you were and you are got lots of free time, maybe you don't, maybe you're working and doing something else as well. But, it's hard to kind of figure out and define yourself without that same consistent reaffirmation of who you are if you're not training as much and competing. So that question of who are you is a big one for mental health in sport, and it's a wide game plan. For those of you who know what that is, has set up a whole lot of help for post-retirement because people are kind of going down this tunnel, as you can see in this picture, in terms of focusing on your training and what your goals are to be a champion, and then here you are in this wide open space, and you don't know what the heck to do with yourself and who you are otherwise because you don't have time for all that stuff while you're going through it. So this big question of like who are you and who are you going to be is a huge source of anxiety for many people, and it came to the forefront this year for many people because of COVID and because of all the things we just talked about. But mental health, again, practitioners and NPCs can really, really help with this in terms of helping you see the wider picture. But I'd like to think that just like these Chinese characters show us, if you haven't seen this already, right, that the character for crisis, the two characters for crisis are the same ones for danger plus opportunity, right? So We do know that with any crisis becomes an opportunity, but the difference between those who feel like it's an opportunity or not has to do with resilience, right? And the degree to which you have some of these core competencies in terms of resilience, right? So don't worry about the details here. You guys are going to get a copy of these slides, by the way. I should have said that at the beginning. So please don't worry about writing things down if that's important to you. But, you know, making sure you have connection, a sense of who you are, character, and your strengths, coping skills, confidence, feeling competent at things and not doubtful, and a sense of control in terms of perhaps process goals, right? When you don't have those outcome goals that you're usually having, we want to have those process goals to get you to feel a lot better in this uncertain time for sure. The good news is that we can build mental muscles just like we can build physical muscles, which is awesome. So it's really cool neuroscience to show this, right? And the brain work is really showing that, like I talked about with quicksand, there's a sense of learning to work with and accept where you are. You're stuck in quicksand at times versus trying to fight it, right? And make it worse and kind of get digging down deeper. So learning to work with that emotion and use it to power your performance, power your life is really, really at the core of what we all need to work on individually and as a team, and especially in sport. Good thing too, that we are not our thoughts and emotions. We can learn, because we are humans, we're not animals. We can learn to witness them. We can learn to step back and not get carried away by them. We just often do because we don't train that muscle very much, right? I don't know how many of you have tried meditation, mindfulness, or just ways of shifting attention, but being able to unhook from thinking is a really, really powerful tool for your performance and for your life. And once we're aware, we can train these minds, and it's essential for performance and recovery, as I said earlier. Okay, so now we're going to break out again. So this is where I'm really hoping you guys will share some of your own experiences, but feel comfortable sharing only what you feel comfortable sharing in terms of your own experiences with mental health. So I'm not asking you to share with anybody about what you're struggling with in terms of the details. I want you to think a little bit instead about how you watch your mental health. So how you keep tabs on it in terms of that continuum, right? From green to red. So the first question is, do you engage in regular mental health check-ins, right? And if so, how? What does that look like? And who knows? Maybe somebody you're talking to in your breakout room is going to get an idea from you, or maybe you guys come up with ideas together. The second question is, how do you know when you're going from the green zone to the red zone on this continuum? And I'm going to actually show the continuum in a second, and you can take a picture of it so you can kind of check in with yourself as you're going through this discussion. And noticing what you notice first, right? What changes for you? Just like, again, you can notice with physical, like a repetitive strain injury, right? We know that mental health kind of knocks at the door until you can't ignore it anymore. And really want you to notice, like, what is it, right? Is it thoughts, feelings, sensations, behaviors? What changes for you? Do you start getting irritable and snappy? Do you start showing up late for practice? What happens for you? Is it insomnia? And then what are some of your best or favorite self-care techniques? So we are going to come back and discuss this. I'm really hoping that one of you from each breakout room would be willing to speak to it when we come back to the bigger group. But I'm just hoping you just get some ideas together for yourselves and then share, and we'll come back in. So Andrew's going to send you off. I would like, though, first of all, for you to take a picture of this screen, because I don't think there's a way to keep this up at the same time as having the breakout rooms. So please take a picture, and then you'll be sent into a random breakout room and come on back to talk about it. So thanks, guys. Hey, so yeah, we just want to get back to the next step here and speak to what you need on each level. So I just want to mention that even in the green, right, you still need to pay attention to mental health. It's not like you stop paying attention to mental health, right? So ask yourself, what are my coping tools? What works well? Let's keep doing it, right? Because we can kind of think that we're doing well and kind of, again, deny that there's anything showing up, but we just want to make sure that those are really well, you're in a groove of really well using them. And if it gets into kind of yellow, orange, we want to start to make sure, like, what needs to go? Is there any stressors I need to kind of put on the back burner? Or I need to kind of say no to something so that I can focus on my mental health a little bit more for a while. And hopefully that brings me back into the green. If you are heading into orange and red, we're really, really hoping this is the opportunity that opens up the door for you to get the help you need. And we're going to talk about how you do that. There's many different ways easily to do that with no questions asked and with anonymous support. So let's get you in there right away, and hopefully you'll reach out immediately to your supports. So overall though, right, if I were to summarize, this is really brief summary, right, of what kind of self-care things we need to pay attention to, we need to monitor, right? So just like your physical health, you need to know where you're at any level. How burnt out are you? Are things increasing or decreasing? And check in on a regular basis. We want you to know your limits, right? So when do you know that you need to press pause or stop on something? Not necessarily saying training, but something else to be able to help you. Sometimes training, right? Respecting your warning signs and really listening to them because they're telling you something. So we often talk in psychology about emotions being huge, the best communicators for us to tell us what our gut needs, and we're just often just not listening. So taking the time and setting aside a time to do so all regular basis, and then seeking support, obviously asking for what you need. And we just talked about that a little bit, but for those of you who don't have easy supports, we want you to be asking yourself today, who might I be underestimating in terms of how much they could support me if I gave them credit? So is there an IST member? Is there a friend? Is there someone who you're thinking couldn't possibly understand, but they do? Those of you who showed up today all do get it because you're here. And I would say to you that there are a lot of people who I help who, until they're kind of forced to tell someone because something happens, or just this week had someone who was suicidal and I had to find out that she was safe. And so I had to contact coach because that was the second contact, and that's where she last was seen. So we need to make sure she was safe. And only until I contact coach did she have that shame bubble burst. She was so grateful that she has rebounded so much faster than we expected, because that's all she needed. She needed to have someone know what was going on in her head. And once coach knew and was supportive, it changed everything, right? We were able to kind of now quickly get her into knowing what she needed, and also getting the support on a day-to-day training. And she's back in training right away, rather than, unfortunately, what happens to some of the other people I support who aren't willing to find someone. Okay, so I would encourage you guys to use mental health as a difference maker, right? For you guys to be unique because you attend to mental health issues, and because you're attending to your well-being and you're using it as a fundamental component of your routine and your philosophy. You're saying, oh yeah, right? So just like the LeBron James, I don't know if anybody uses that Calm app, right? But he has a great little series on there that talks a lot about, if you knew, he talks about sleep actually in particular in one of his sessions, but if you knew that you had this most powerful, smoothie that had all the vitamins that could do everything you knew you needed, and you could have it for free, right? Wouldn't you take it, right? And this is what I'm trying to say to you guys, right? Whether it's sleep or whether it's checking in with your mental health, this is a free thing for you to be able to do that would actually lead to a huge change in your well-being and your performance. And it's just about reaching out and buying it or taking it. Establishing minimum standards for mental health through your peaking and recovery periods throughout the year, making sure that you have a wide view of that and knowing what you need. When we are in heavy duty training mode, intense training mode, we have totally different needs and we have totally different limits than we do when we are not. Anticipating that you're going to have some mental health strategies or challenges, throughout the year, right? Anticipating potential illness. If you do have a history of illness in particular and you have a pre-morbid condition, we want to make sure that you're just aware of that, right? Just like diabetes, right? You know when it's going to get off the rails, and you know that stress is going to impact it. So let's plan ahead and make sure that we have a series of things in place for that. And asking for what you need. So I think I spoke to this. I'm going to come to this, which is an example of a mental health action plan that we can do. You can do with a mental health support. You can do with an IST member. You can do with an NPC. You could do with a friend, and you can do with a coach. So I highly, highly recommend doing something where you're really clearly walking through what it is that are your triggers, how you cope under pressure, know your go-tos, and write it down somewhere. Because when you get into that red zone, that orange or red zone, our brains naturally get narrow. And we don't think straight. We don't remember what our coping skills are. We don't believe they're going to help. So we just don't bother. So I highly recommend you have some sort of written plan, and even put it into a letter, an envelope, and give it to a trusted other. And when they start to notice changes in you, they can hand it to you and say, hey, this is a letter to yourself when you are feeling better, to remember to put these into play. The other thing this can be useful for is for things like the games or championships or anything else where you might want to actually say, okay, I need others to know that these are the warning signs for me, and this is what I'm going to need from them in order to get back on track. Because as Liz mentioned earlier, if we have people knowing that when they respond with panic or a reaction that is not so helpful, that's going to just throw us off. But if we say to you, please, when I tell you that I'm having really dark thoughts, don't panic. Just, this is what I need, right? I need healthy distraction. I need something else. I need whatever it is that you need, but having that communication ahead of time is what we're encouraging. And we really, really want to help you do that. And hopefully my role will help also put that into play on a regular basis in terms of having that mental health structure. So we also know, though, that there are tons of barriers to help seeking that we have commented on earlier in terms of stigma, but I just want to mention that we're going to try and attend to some of these things in AC culture. So I don't need to go through each one of these, but I do want you to know that we are really, really aware of the potential that some of you and some of your teammates may not trust the administration. You may not trust that you have the support or the sport-specific knowledge in the members that you're reaching out to. You may have had a bad mental health experience where you went to someone that wasn't a good fit, or they knew nothing about sport, and that just really sucks, but it's changing. And I'm so excited to be a part of this, where we are actually changing across Canada. COC and also the International Olympic Committee are playing a big role in changing how mental health is at the forefront. So please, guys, let's catch the wave, and let's trust the process and know that we're here to kind of troubleshoot. If you're still having some of these experiences, it's here for you. So let's just speak briefly about my role. I am planning on developing a formal written strategy, including protocols to follow for handling mental health concerns, so that we are all on the same page, from admin all the way down and out. Also, developing trust in you guys, that you're not going to be shamed or blamed, and that help is encouraged. We're all on the same team. We all have the same goals, not only for you in performance, but also in terms of your life. And let's be clear about that. We want to create some seasonal mental health plans and mental health check-ins for athletes, just as we would for the physical. So we're going to be connecting, I'm going to be connecting with APAs, IST coaches, and you guys, which I'm just doing now, but also on an individual basis as best as possible to speak the same language and make sure that you guys have the supports you need. If you've got them, that's great. And lastly, providing consultation and education and resources throughout. So again, right, this is just the beginning, as Simon says. This is at least hopefully a 4-year run, and we're going to have a buildup of things and more things available for you. But in the meantime, as things get going and you start trusting, it's going to be maybe a little bit more as people reach out, but we're going to make it proactive as much as we can going forward. So if you need help now, I do want to bring your attention to some of the referral pathways that are here, and it's just loading. So there we go. Okay. So you may or may not be aware of some of these pathways and have tried some and hated them or whatever. I just, again, want you to please keep an open mind that things are changing. So the couple I want to bring your attention to in particular are the Canadian Centre for Mental Health and Sport, who helped me with some of these slides because they're doing some education and we're just trying not to work in silos. And also the Mental Health Network of practitioners that are there, who are psychologists, psychiatrists. And by the way, in the slides I'm going to send you, I'm going to define those terms for you in case you're wondering, who does what does, a psychologist do. But I just want to say that these professionals are here and you have the capacity to get 5 sessions free, no questions asked, just go for it. And I'll tell you how to do that in a second. And more, hopefully, with a quick discussion with me that would allow for what do we really need and how can we make sure you're getting the right fit going forward. Some of you may have your own help already, and that's totally cool too. If you want some support financially for that, then I'm also going to show you a way to try and get that. So you don't have to know all these details. I just want to let you know that I'm playing a role also in building the network so that across Canada, we have more sport-minded people who are trained to do the help, give you the help that you need, and that are vetted ahead of time. Okay, so that's being built right now, and there's a lot more than there were even 6 months ago. So you'll see this when I send it, again, just loading up here, but there is through Game Plan and CCMHS, that kind of 5 sessions free. They have NPCs if you need them, if you need beyond the ones we have in the hubs, or you need a different fit. We also have mental health network professionals who you can access through the self-referral form, or you can link the professional you already have. Let's say you have a therapist outside of the hub now, or outside of, this network. You can see if maybe Game Plan will pay for your sessions, depending on whether they can vet that professional really briefly and make sure that there's no concerns. And again, this can be done without sharing any confidential information, okay? So I don't even have to say what your name is when I apply for funding for someone to pay me for the sessions, okay? And you can also reach out to me. You will have my email and my contact information in the slides. There's one more comment before I open up for questions, and that is really mostly about if you have to help someone else. So many of you might have been approached by a teammate or someone else or a family member who's struggling in terms of mental health. And I want to comment that if they do approach you, a big congrats. That says a lot. It's a huge compliment, right? Because it means you've created a safe space. You've allowed for them to come to you. And it means they probably don't also have, again, the family or other supports that they need to have the support they need. So if you're helping someone else, please make sure your own tank is full. Don't do it if you don't feel like you can handle this, and know your resources, let alone the resources you might want to give to them. Recognize if there's any change in what's going on for them, and perhaps catch it if you can to have the difficult conversation even before they come to you. So if they do come to you, or if you are able to connect and reach out to them because you're worried about them, obviously creating a safe space, but the most important piece of information to me is to not get in your head about it. Don't worry about the details of what you're going to say or not say. Just listen and be curious, and that's it. So really the most important part is to validate that what they're saying is real and deserves help and needs help, and there is help. Hopefully that's useful for you. Oh, and one more thing is that, for Tokyo, for those of you who are going, there's also Athlete 365, which is a resource for from the IOC. There's an app that's going to be there. The help is going to be ramped up before, during, after the games. There will be mental health leads at the games. These are people who are registered psychologists. Both happen to be from Alberta. Great people, met them both, and also any other NPCs and staffs that are going to the games. Again, one more thing though is if you are, we would want to make sure that we have a mental health plan. Even if you're doing well, we're planning for any potential things you think might come up as a function of that pressure, and let alone COVID and anything else that comes up. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. There are a few slides here that have to do with resources, and you guys can check those out on your own. There's some apps. These are not exhaustive. So I'm going to kind of stop though, because you can always look those up, and there's more individually curated ones that I could provide. If you know you have a particular issue or a particular mental health issue or illness, and you're looking for maybe some self-help resources as well, let alone kind of just calling Game Plan, please reach out, because I have a ton in my back pocket and I can find exactly what you need with a very, very quick conversation. So it doesn't have to be anything formal, and it doesn't have to go anywhere. So that's really important information for you. Okay. So I'm going to stop and open it up for questions. I'm really hoping that you guys are willing to share and come off of mute and share any questions that we have as we kind of wind down in our time together. Thanks for coming, everybody.